Hi guys, so welcome to my channel Shiva's Tech Hub. So in this series of Java tutorials, today we will be looking at what actually is an array. Okay, so this is the agenda for today. So first we'll be looking at what actually is an array, then how can we declare and initialize an array, and what are the various ways to access the elements of an array. And if you want to manipulate the array element, how can you do that? And also looping through an array. And finally, we'll be looking into multidimensional array. Okay, so first let us try to understand what actually is an array. So array is a collection of multiple similar type of elements. Okay, so this particular point is divided into two parts. First thing is it will hold multiple elements, and the second part is it will hold of similar type, right? So whenever you declare or initialize a value to a particular variable, it just holds a single value. But whenever you initialize multiple values to an array, so it holds those multiple values of similar type. Okay, so that is what is being said in the second point, like it is used to hold the multiple values in a single variable instead of taking one variable for each value. Okay, so now in order to declare an array, we will be using the square brackets. Okay, so first let me write down an example between a variable and an array. So for example, int a equal to 10. So this is a variable that holds a single integer value. Now if you consider this, so here it is holding multiple integer values. Right, so this is a difference. So here the variable is the same for all the elements like 10, 20, 30, 40. Just that if you want to access a particular element, that you can do it by using its index position. Okay, so for example, a of 0, 10 will be written. So a of 1, 20 will be written, a of 2, 30 will be written, and a of 3, 40 will be written, and so on. Okay. So next, let us look into how to declare and initialize an array. So for variables, like I said, we can declare a variable by specifying the data type and the variable name. Similarly, like initializing variable, you can do it by assigning a value. So in the same way, we can also do the declaration as well as initialization part for an arrays. So in the first example which we are seeing here, we are declaring an array with the name A, which is of string type. Okay. Now, in the second point, what we are doing is we are assigning multiple values to this particular array. So, for example, this particular array A holds three strings, that is Shiva, Krishna, and Dupeli. So, these are the three strings that this particular array is being held. And for example, if you want to declare a different type of an array, so for example, in this case, we have declared an string type of array. If you want to declare an integer type, you can also do that by specifying it in this way, like data type, array name, and square bracket. Okay, so this is the declaration. If you want to initialize the values, data type, array name, square brackets equal to the list of values that you want to assign. So now let us look into the topic of how we can access the elements of an array. So accessing elements of an array can be done by using loops. For example, for a single value, you can directly print or you can change it directly. But since here there are multiple values that are present in an array, we need to use loops. Okay. So we have a separate session for loop control statements. So for now, let us try to understand as it is. Right. So for example, we can access the elements of an array, as I said, by using its index. Index is nothing but the position of that particular element. For example, this element is present at index 0. So this is present at 0 and also 20. Okay, so 20 is present at an index position. Okay, so this is present at an index position 1 and 30 is present at index position 2. 40 is at 3 and 50 is at 4. So for example, if I have to write it based on the index and the value, so for example, a of 0 is nothing but 10, A of 1 equal to 20, A of 2 equal to 30, A of 3 equal to 40, A of 4 equal to 50. So this is how we can access the elements of an array using its index. So for example, I want to print the element that is present at 0th index. Okay, so that we can do it by using this particular statement. Okay. So now, how can we change the element of an array? So changing is nothing but assigning some other value or doing some operations on a particular element that is present in an array. So for example, changing the element in the sense we want to assign a different value to that particular element that is present in an array. So that we can do it directly by getting the element that is present at that particular index, and you can directly assign a new value to that particular element. So let us try to understand this particular example. Okay, so which I am showing here. So for example, we have declared an array which holds four values of integer type. Now I want to assign a value, a different value that is present for an element that is present at the second index position. So if you consider this is the 0th index, this is the first index, and this is the second index. So in this case, 50 will be replaced by 70. Okay. Now if you try to print the entire array, so instead of 10, 30, 50 and 60, 10, 30, 70 and 60 will be printed. So let me write it down over here. So since we have changed the element that is present at A of 2, so this will be printed 10, 30, 70 and 60. So this will be the output. Got it, guys? Okay. So let's look into how we can find the length of an array. So length of an array is nothing but for a single dimensional array, it returns you with the number of elements that are present in that particular array. So for example, if you consider this example, int array equal to 10, 30, 50, 60, this array has four elements of integer type. So that can be returned by using this particular function. Okay, so length is the function. Okay, so let me mark it over here. So this is the function, and this needs to be added along with the name of an array. So this is the name of an array, right? So the same thing is being added over here. Okay, so array dot length. So this will return you with an output of 4, saying that there are 4 elements. Okay, so now let us look into how we can loop through an array. So looping through an array is nothing but, for example, as I said, array holds multiple elements of similar types, right? So for example, if you want to get the elements that are present at each and every index position, that we can do it by using loops, and this process we call it as looping. So for example, string cars is an array, so that holds three strings, right? Vento, Bellino and Creta, right? So now I want to get the elements that are present at each and every index position. Okay, so that can be done by using adding this particular for loop. So for int I equal to 0, I equal to 0 is nothing but index, starting index, right? So for example, it is an integer type, right? 0, 1, 2. So all these are integer types. So that is why I'm taking an integer variable int I equal to 0, I less than or equal to cars dot length. So how many times this process is going to repeat? It starts counting from 0 until it becomes equal to cars dot length. So it means it until it becomes 3, it will start counting, and I plus plus. So at each and every iteration, it increments the value of I by 1. So for example, let me write it down over here. So for example, cars of first it is starting with 0, right? 0. Okay. So the length. So let me write it down the length as well over here. Length is equal to 3. We know that length is equal to 3. There are three elements. So for example, car of 0 equal to Vento, and 0 is, so 0 is less than 3, so it moves to the second iteration. So since we are incrementing the value of I by 1, so this becomes, okay, so let me write it down over here. So for example, car of 1 equal to Baleno and car of 2 equal to Creta. So once this is printed, okay, so once this is printed, what will happen is it will increment the value of I by 1. So now 2 becomes 3. So since it is equal to I less than or equal to 3. So now it has become equal to 3. So that is why it will get out of that particular loop. So this will be the output. For example, Vento will be printed first, then Baleno, then Creta. So that is how we need to looping through an array. Okay. So we can also loop through an array by using for each statement. So this is similar to for loop, just that the way you use it will be different. So let us try to understand. So here I am taking an array with three strings, Shiva, Krishna, Dupeli. For example, I want to iterate through each and every element that are present in this particular array. So for that, what I can do is first we need to find out the type of an array. So the type of this particular array is string. So that is why we need to take a variable of string type. Then you need to iterate through an array, right? So here you need to add the array name. Okay. So for example, let me write the syntax over here. So you need to read it as for each. Okay. So for is the keyword. It is common for both for loop as well as for each. The only difference is first you need to take the type variable name, or you can call it as type iterator. So for example, for integer it becomes int I, for strings it is string I, right? So iterate through an array. So this is nothing but the name of an array. Okay. So for example, let us try to understand the same example. For what is the type of an array? So type of an array is string, right? Iterator, you can take anything between A to Z. So for example, in this case, I am taking I, then colon. What is the name of an array? Names. Okay. So if you print I, so what it will be printed is in the first iteration, it will print Shiva. Then in the second iteration, what it does is it will print Krishna. Then in the third iteration, it will print Tupel. So this is what will be printed using for each. Then next we'll be looking at what actually is multidimensional array. So multidimensional array is nothing but array of arrays. So basically an array is nothing but a collection of elements. Now, when it comes to multidimensional array, within the same variable name, we can store multiple arrays, array of arrays. So that is what we call array of arrays. So basically, in other way, what we can understand is like it is a combination of rows and columns. Okay, you can understand it in a tabular form. Okay, so for example, in tabular form or a table, we do have rows and columns. Okay, so rows pointing to the horizontal values, whereas column points to the vertical values, right? So that is what is a multidimensional array. So in order to create a two-dimensional or a multidimensional array, you need to add each array within its own set of curly braces. Okay, so let us try to understand it with the below example. So here I am creating a two-dimensional array. Okay, so the name of an array is numbers, right? So this is the first array and this is the second array. Okay, so it means like you can also understand it this way. So for example, this is the row number 1 and this is the row number 2. Okay, and this is the column number 1 and this is column number 2. Okay, so for example, let me write it down. So this is column number 1. This is column number 2, this is column number 3, and this is column number 4 of row 1. Now, when you consider this, this is column number 1, this is column number 2, this is column number 3, this is column number 4. Okay, so one important point which I forgot to mention is that it always starts counting from 0. So, instead of 1, you can consider this as 0 and this as 1. Okay, similarly for this. Okay, so this should be 0 and this should be 1. Okay, let me write it, let me strike it and let me write it down. 0, 1, 2 and 3. Same thing 0, 1, 2 and 3. So, okay, so this is how we need to understand. So, for example, I want to get a value 50. Okay, so 50. So it is present at 0th row and second column. Okay, so you need to get it by using this particular format. Numbers of 0 2, right? So what it will be printed? 50 will be printed. Now I want to get 100. Okay, so 100 in the sense it is presented the first row and second column. Okay, equal to 100. So this will be printed. So this is how you need to understand multi-dimensional array. Then same thing, accessing elements of multidimensional array. So as I said in the previous slide, if you want to access the element of a single dimensional array or one dimensional array, you need to specify the index, correct? So in order to access the elements of multidimensional array, you need to specify multiple indexes. Simple. Okay, so the same thing which I explained in the previous slide. So now I want to access an element 30, right? So that can be done by using the row and the column number, okay, or a row index or column index, you can call it rather. Okay, so let me make it easy for you guys. So for example, let us consider this as row 1 and this as row 2. Okay, so let me mark this as C. Okay, so since it starts counting from 0, let me mark it row 0 and row 1, column 0, column 1, column 2, and column 3. Okay, so for example, whatever you are seeing over here in this particular horizontal part, so that is nothing but this particular index. Okay, so this particular index. So whatever you are seeing in the vertical part, this is this particular index. Okay, so now let me write it down. Okay, so it is 10, 20, 30, 40, right? Similarly, 50, 60, 70, and 80, right? So for example, as I said, we want to access the element that is present at 0th row and second column. So this is 0th row, right? So this row is the 0th row. So let me mark it down. So this row is the 0th row and this is the 0th column, right? This is the first column and this is the second column and this is the third column. Now we want 0th row, so which means this particular row and second element or second column you can consider. So this is the second column, right? 0th row and second column. So this is the element. Okay? 30 is the element. So that is what will be printed. So this is how we will be accessing the elements of a multi-dimensional array. The How can we change the elements or manipulate the elements of a multidimensional array? So let us consider with this example the same thing. You just need to assign a different value. But since this is a multidimensional array, so you need to specify two indexes because the index that is present at which row and which column. Okay, so for example, if we organize it in the same way as we did it for the earlier slide, so 10, 20, 30, and 40, 50, 60, so let me write it down as 60, 70, and 80, then 50, 70, 80, 150. So these are the three-dimensional arrays, right? Not two-dimensional, three-dimensional, which has three rows. So this is the row 1, and this is the row 2, and this is the row 3, right? And four columns. 3 and 4. So these are the four columns. Now I want to access the element that is present at 0th row and second column. So 0th row is nothing but this particular row 10, 20, 30, 40 row and the second column 0, 1, 2, right? So 0, 1, 2. So it means like 30 will be printed. Okay, in this example. Okay, so normally 30 will be printed. So since we are assigning the value 100 in place of 30, so this will be printed 10, 20, 100, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 50, 70, 80, 150. So that is what will be printed since we are replacing this particular value, this value 30 with 100, right? So the output will be 10, 20, 100, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 50, 70, 80, 150. Okay. So that is how we can change the elements of a multidimensional array. Then, so let's look into looping through multidimensional array. So in the earlier slide, we have seen how can we loop through a single dimensional array. Similarly, we can also do it for multidimensional array. The only difference is, as I said, we need multiple index positions and also multiple loops. For a single dimensional array, we just use a single index and also a single loop, single for loop. But when it comes to multi-dimensional array, we need to use multiple index locations as well as multiple loops. So let us try to understand. So here we are specifying that my numbers is a multi-dimensional array. So here we have specified. So let me write it down over here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So in the first row, there are 4 elements. In the second row, there are 3 elements, right? So this is the first row and this is the second row. Okay, so let me mark it down. This is row 1 and this is row 2 and this is column 1, column 2, column 3 and column 4. Okay, so 4 columns and 2 rows. Okay, now if you want to iterate through the elements that are present in that particular array, so let us understand this particular for loop. Okay, so for I equal to 0, I starts with 0, I less than my numbers dot length. So my numbers dot length returns you with the number of rows. Okay, number of rows is nothing but is less than 2 I plus plus. Okay, so this is the first loop. Now J is nothing but elements. Okay, elements that are present at 0th row, first element, 0th row, second element, and so on. Okay, so my numbers I dot length. So I dot length is nothing but, for example, in this particular first iteration, it will go to this particular thing, and in this particular ith array. So for example, 0th array, there are 4 elements, right? So j equal to 4. That is what it will be printed. So here, okay, so let me write it down over here. J equal to 0, j less than 4, j plus plus. So in the first iteration, this is what it will be, right? Okay, so let me write it down over here again. So I equal to 0, I less than numbers dot length is nothing but it returns the number of rows, I plus plus. Okay, so for j equal to 0, j less than 4 for the first iteration because it will initially interact with the first array, that is 1, 2, 3, 4. So it has 4. Now when it comes to I value becomes 1 since we are incrementing it. I less than 2, I plus plus, then j equal to, j also will be incremented, j equal to 1. Okay, so j less than, I is nothing but 3 elements. There are 3 elements in an array, j plus plus. Okay, so what will happen is 0 0. So first element will be printed. Okay, so 0th array and in the 0th array, 0th element 0 1, 0 2, 0 3, then 1 0, 1 1, 1 2. Okay, so that is how it will be printed. So this is how we can loop through multi-dimensional arrays in Java. So let us now try to understand single dimensional as well as multi-dimensional array with an example. So here I have created a class with the name arrays example. So let me first create a single dimensional array with some values. Then let me create a multidimensional array with a different variable. So this is how you need to do it. So I have created a flower brace open and close. So this is the first array and this is the second array. You can also call it as row or column. So for example, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. Okay, so first operation is let us try to get the number of elements that are present in an array. So array is a dot length. Okay. So let us do the same thing for the two-dimensional array. Okay, so let us try to print it first. Okay, so the length of an array is 2. I mean, for the multidimensional array, and for the single dimensional array, the length is 4. So now let us try to understand what it has actually printed. So as I said in the definition, like for length, if you are doing it for single dimensional array, it will return you with the number of elements that are present in an array. So it means like, so basically whatever is being written on main flower brace and close brace, so it returns that many number of elements. Now when you come to multi-dimensional array, so under this flower brace open and flower brace close, there are two elements, or you can call it as two arrays. So that is why it has written two. Okay, so let me show you again. So it has written 2. So it means like in between this flower brace open and flower brace close, it will just consider these things as two elements. Okay, this is the first element and this is the second element. Okay, so now let us try to iterate through the elements of a single dimensional as well as multidimensional array. So first let us complete it for single dimensional, then we will move on to multidimensional. Okay, so let me comment it, iterate. Okay, so as I said, we need a for loop, right? So for int I equal to 0, I less than or equal to a dot length I plus plus. Okay, so this is to iterate. So now I want to print the element. So let me give a meaningful name, right? So this is how it will be printed. So first let us try to execute it. Okay, so we are getting array index out of bound exception. So the array length is 4, so I am trying to print it, or we can do it this way. Okay, so let us try to print it. So it is working as expected. So the reason, since we are starting counting from 0, it should be length minus 1. It should not be length. If you are starting counting from 1, then it will be a dot length. So that is the only thing which we need to remember. So the 0 element of an array is 10. The first element of an array is 20, second element of an array is 30, third element of an array is 40. So that is how it will be printed. So this particular 0 is nothing but it is the index. Okay, so index of that particular array element. Okay, okay, so now what we can do is let us change the content. Change the content of an array. So for example, I want to replace the value that is present at a specified index position with a different value. Okay. So let us try to check how we can do that. For example, let us take an example of 40. I want to replace 40 with, for example, 120. Okay. So that can be done. So first what you need to do, you need to find out the index position of 40. So it is present at a third index position, 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So directly a of 3 equal to 120. Okay. So now what will happen is this 40 will be replaced with 120. So now let us try to print the elements of an array. Same thing, I can just use this. So this is after changing, right? So let me print a meaningful name. Okay, printing array after changing the value. Okay, got it? So see 10, 20, 30. So I have replaced the element that is present at the third index position to 120. So third element of an array is 120. So this is how we can change the contents of an array. Similarly, we can also do it for multidimensional arrays. So let us try to first print the elements of a multidimensional array. So as I said, like for multidimensional array, the number of dimensions, that many number of loops we will be using it. So in this case, it is a two-dimensional array, right? So we need two loops. Okay. Okay. So for example, let me take int j equal to 0, j less than or equal to b dot length minus 1 j plus plus for int k equal to 0, k less than or equal to p of I dot length minus 1 k plus plus. Okay, so let me print the row number. So I can just print the value j and this will be k. Okay, so let me check if there is any other issue. Oh, I need to replace this with j. So this points to the number of rows, so which is nothing but two rows, and this points to the number of columns or number of elements present in this each row. So for example, initially it will be 0, right? So in the 0th row there are three elements, right? So the k value will be iterated until 3, right? So now j becomes 1. So 1 is nothing but this is the first row, and there are three elements in the first row as well. So similarly, the k will iterate until this particular condition, like three elements. Okay, so let me try to print it. Got it? So the element present at 0th row, 0th column is 50. The element present at 0th row, first column is 60. Okay, the element present at 0th row, second column is 70. The element present at first row, 0th column is nothing but 80. It means it is pointing to this particular array. The element present at first row, first column is 90. First row, first column is 90. Element present at first row, second column is nothing but 100. Okay. So this is how we will be printing or iterating through the elements of a multidimensional array. So now let us try to change the elements of a multidimensional array. Okay. So for example, let us take the index position. So for example, let us consider 50, 60, 70. So this is the 0th row, this is the first row, right? I want to change the element 80 to, for example, 160. Okay, so let us consider with an example. So now first we need to find out the location or position of this particular 80. So according to the definition, it is present at first row and first column. So it will be 1 and 1, right? Sorry, first row and 0th column. Okay. So it will be 1 and 0. So B of row number is 1 and the column number is 0. Okay, which is 80. So I want to change it to, for example, 160. Okay, same thing. Try to iterate after changing it. Okay, same thing. You can use it. Now the expected output is 50, 60, 70, 160, 90, and 100. So that is how it should be printed. So let us check. Got it, guys? So first it has printed 50. Okay. So this is the thing. Okay. So 50, 60, 70 as it is. In place of 80, 160 is printed because we have changed the element that is present at this particular index to 160. Then the next element 90 is printed as it is, then 100 is printed. Okay. So this is how we will be changing the elements of a multi-dimensional array. That's it for this video, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe to my channel Shiva's Tech Hub and get notified to the future updates. And also don't forget to share it on various social media platforms. Thank you.